By February 1942, the American dream had become a waking nightmare. The disaster at Pearl Harbor was only weeks old. The Philippines were falling. In the minds of West Coast residents, it wasn't a matter of if the Japanese would invade, but when. This was a time of deep primal fear. Just days before the infamous battle, President Roosevelt signed Executive Order 9066, authorizing the internment of Japanese Americans. This act, born of suspicion and racial prejudice, cast a dark shadow over the nation, creating a backdrop of extreme internal paranoia. On the streets of Los Angeles, that fear was palpable. Neighborhood watch groups were formed, their members armed with little more than binoculars and suspicion. Blackout curtains became mandatory, plunging the city into an unnatural darkness each night. Every fisherman's boat was a suspected scout vessel, every unexpected noise a potential air raid. The collective nervous system of Los Angeles was stretched to the snapping point. It was a city holding its breath, waiting for the other shoe to drop. On February 23, 1942, the fear became reality. The I-17, a massive Japanese submarine, surfaced near Santa Barbara. Its commander, Kozo Nishino, had a personal score to settle. Before the war, he'd worked in the very oil fields he was now targeting, and a humiliating stumble over a cactus plant had made him a laughingstock. Now, he was back for revenge. The sub fired 16 high-explosive shells at the Elwood oil refinery. While the physical damage was negligible, a few ruined pipes, a damaged derrick, and a pier, the psychological damage was absolute. For the first time in over a century, a foreign power had officially struck the American mainland. The attack, though minor, was a massive propaganda victory for Japan and a catastrophic blow to American morale. The West Coast was no longer a distant home front, it was a front line. In response, the 37th Coast Artillery Brigade was immediately placed on a Condition 1 alert, the highest state of readiness. Every gunner was on a hair trigger, their eyes scanning the dark horizon, expecting the full weight of the Japanese Empire to descend at any moment. The technology of 1942 was in its infancy. Radar, a new and almost magical tool, was unreliable and deeply mysterious to many of its operators. They were staring at green phosphor screens, trying to distinguish between a flock of birds, a bank of clouds, and a squadron of Mitsubishi G4M bombers. At 2:25 a.m. on February 25th, the sirens began their 5-minute wail. The city of Los Angeles, all 450 square miles of it, went pitch black. Moments earlier, operators at an SCR-268 radar station had picked something up, an unidentified blip just 120 miles off the coast. It was moving at a brisk 200 miles per hour, then suddenly slowed to a crawl, almost hovering. This was not the flight pattern of any known military aircraft. Reports flooded in from civilian observers, describing a single, large object moving slowly through the sky. Air raid wardens were activated, their helmets and armbands the only sign of authority in the suffocating darkness. The blip continued its strange, leisurely journey inland, setting the stage for one of the most bizarre nights in American history. At 3:06 a.m., the sky ignited. Following orders to open fire on any and all unidentified aircraft, the 37th Brigade let loose. The night erupted with the thunder of 3-inch and 37mm anti-aircraft guns. Over the next hour, Guantelon's 433 shells were launched into the atmosphere. The residents of Santa Monica, Culver City, and Long Beach woke up to what they thought was the end of the world. Shell casings rained down on houses and streets, shrapnel tore through buildings, and the relentless flash and boom of the artillery created a terrifying spectacle. Peter Jenkins, a volunteer air raid warden in Santa Monica, later gave a vivid account. He reported, "It was like a giant orange lozenge hanging in the air. The shells were bursting all around it, but it just kept moving south, slow and steady, as if the explosions were nothing but flies." The object, whatever it was, seemed impervious. It drifted calmly over vital wartime targets like the Douglas Aircraft Plant and the Long Beach Naval Shipyard, drawing fire the entire way before eventually disappearing from sight. The sun rose on a city littered with jagged steel and unanswered questions. 5 people were dead. 3 had died in car crashes during the blackout. 2 others had suffered fatal heart attacks from the stress and terror of the bombardment. But as the military scoured the coast and the city for evidence, they found nothing. There was zero wreckage. No downed planes, no oil slicks, no parachutes. Nothing to justify the 1,400 shells that had been fired. The official narrative immediately began to crumble. A civil war of words broke out within the government. Navy Secretary Frank Knox, eager to downplay the incident and protect the Navy's reputation, called it a false alarm, blaming the entire thing on war nerves. Puzdai. But Army Secretary Henry Stimson fired back, publicly insisting that as many as 15 enemy planes were present over the city. This public disagreement between the heads of the Army and Navy was unprecedented, and it fueled decades of conspiracy theories. How could two branches of the military see the same skies so differently? Was it incompetence, or was it a cover-up for something far stranger? Modern historians suggest a theory known as a convergence of errors. The most likely culprit to trigger the initial panic was a stray weather balloon, released by a U.S. meteorological unit and forgotten. In the heightened state of alert, one jumpy gunner fired on this innocuous target. That single shot set off a chain reaction. The smoke from the explosion, brilliantly illuminated by the crisscrossing beams of a billion candle-power searchlights, created a ghost target, an amorphous moving blob in the sky. As more guns fired, more smoke was produced, and the illusion became larger and more defined. The gunners, gripped by fear and confirmation bias, were essentially chasing a projection of their own fear across the sky. They were firing at smoke and shadows, their own artillery bursts, creating the very target they sought to destroy. The Battle of Los Angeles remains a haunting testament to the power of mass hysteria. It was a night when 1,400 shells were fired at an illusion, and the illusion won. In the fog of war, the greatest enemy isn't always the one across the ocean. Sometimes it's the one in our own minds. Thanks for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as I did, don't forget to like and subscribe for more dives into the world's greatest mysteries.